All right, so we're 1 minute past the hour now, so let's kick things off. So welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to be talking all about the cool things we've been working on in Dashboard Server 6.3. So let's have a little bit of a look. But before we do, just to quickly introduce myself. So I'm Bruce Cullen, I'm Director of Products here at SquaredUp, and I'm responsible for Dashboard Server, among other things, which is why you have me presenting to you today. Hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you may have, but if not, I know the right people to ask those questions too. So please do leave questions throughout in the questions and chat facility in Livestorm. Let's have a look at Dashboard Server 6.3 then. So normally, I put together this slide before every webinar, every release webinar, which is an intention. The intention is to show all the features of the release in a single dashboard. Now, I struggled with this one because there are quite a lot of features you just can't simply fit in one slide in Dashboard Server 6.3. Now, I know it's not a major version. It's not a .0 version or anything, but I don't think we've done a release as big as this in quite a while. So I'm quite excited about this one. So looking forward to showing you what's in this release. The release is split into kind of three themes, really. The biggest one being obviously SCOM, System Center Operations Manager. Making your life easier as a SCOM administrator is the #1 goal of Dashboard Server, and reducing the number of times you have to go into any of the native SCOM consoles is a good thing, and that's been our focus really for this release. And there are some delighters in here, some nice things to make dashboarding nicer and your dashboards nicer to look at. And we're also touching on the single pane of glass theme. Bear in mind that we're a dashboarding company with 2 dashboarding products. The single pane of glass theme is ever more important than in the past. So let's start off with focusing on our System Center Operations Manager, or SCOM theme, starting with the feature I'm very excited to talk about, which is all around maintenance mode, in particular scheduled maintenance mode. Now, maintenance mode has been one of those funny old things. It's been in SCOM for a very long period of time. And the main way that people access maintenance mode is via the trusty SCOM console, which is absolutely fine. It works, though not the prettiest thing in the world. There are a few issues, though, with this approach. Obviously, you have to have access to the SCOM console. But in addition to that, you have to know what you're doing, because with great power comes great responsibility. If you enable maintenance mode for some things that you're not aware of, you could cause things to not be monitored. This should be monitored. And obviously, you can do a whole bunch of other damage from within the SCOM console. And then there's my biggest bugbear of all with the SCOM console for maintenance mode, which is this. You come in here, you go create maintenance mode schedule, and you're presented with a blank box. You have to know what scope you want to add every single time. There is no contextual awareness of what you were doing before. You can't even copy an existing schedule and start with a predefined scope. It starts from blank every time. It feels like a sort of detached experience from the rest of SCOM. You've asked for this feature. In fact, I think this is possibly our most requested feature ever for Dashboard Server in the most recent years, that's for sure. But we have listened, and we are working on, have fixed rather, this problem by introducing a solution, which looks like this. So now within Dashboard Server, you can see maintenance mode windows that are in effect right now. You can also see schedules. You can modify those schedules, disable those schedules, and modify existing windows as well. When editing or creating a schedule, it looks a little bit like this. All the options down here are very familiar because they're the same ones you get in the SCOM console. Ultimately, we're using the underlying SCOM SDK to facilitate this piece of functionality. And there are a number of key differences, aside from user experience, that we'll kind of go through as we get into demo land in a minute. The other feature, which is very worth mentioning, is the alert Scalar tile. So alerts obviously are the bread and butter of SCOM. They have been for quite some time, or forever, as far as SCOM is concerned. But one visualization has been sort of missing for quite some time, which is the humble but mighty Scalar tile. It's all well and good seeing alerts in list form or summarized by donut, but sometimes you just want a count, you just want a number. So again, this was a customer requested feature that was relatively simple for us to implement. So we thought, hey, let's just do it. So let's just pause the slides for a second now, and we'll get into demos. and then we'll come back to slides a second. So let me just find the right window for demos, which should be over here. Right, so this is Dashboard Server 6.3, my showcase dashboard, the one you saw a screenshot of right at the beginning. So it is a poor attempt at trying to summarize everything that's in the release. But we're going to start with the things you can see that I've shown you. So the obvious one is the alert Scalar tile, which is this guy here. If I put the dashboard and the tile in edit mode, you'll see that as with all of our alert tiles, it's accessed via alerts. And then it is Scalar. So no real surprises there. It takes a scope. Now, in this case, I've configured the scope to filter on alerts based on a criteria. And the criteria I've used is description like site has been stopped. And I've done this because ultimately it's really, really frustrating. This lab is used by a large number of our team. Now, when they go away on holiday, because it's partly production stuff, partly demo lab stuff, they will go and shut the non-production stuff down, which is fair enough, no problem with that. But they don't always put those servers into maintenance mode, which means this tile sometimes will light up when it shouldn't. So this is why I've filtered on this particular alert. This is obviously for websites being unavailable. Some of these will be important. The other thing I've done, this isn't a new piece of functionality, but exists within the Scalar tile elsewhere within the product. But I've set some conditional formatting up to make it red when there are any alerts. And in this case, sadly, but predictably, there are some alerts. So we're going to drill down into those alerts now, those 5 alerts. And we're going to have a look at what they are. And there we go. There are 5 of them. Now, just from casting my eye down this list, this top one is from a machine, which I know the owner of this machine is a one-to-one mapping in this case. It's the demo lab after all. This guy is off on holiday. So this alert should never have been here. This box should have been put into maintenance mode. So I'm going to drill down into the object, which will be the website, I presume. Here, I'm going to go to the server itself at the bottom of the hosting stack, which looks like this. And from here, I have got my maintenance mode button up here in the top right corner. Now, this button exists in Dashboard Server 6.3 and prior releases, but the difference is when you click it. So if I do that, you will see an entirely new experience that looks like this. You'll see there are no current active maintenance mode windows. So you could have told that from this screen, because you can see clearly that the machine is not in maintenance mode and alerts are being generated. You can also see the schedules. So there are a bunch of test schedules here, which is cool. None are in effect right now. But do you know what? I'm going to do this guy a favor, and I'm going to put his machine into maintenance mode for him. Now I clicked new maintenance mode, which is good. And useful. It's there in SquaredUp. But the thing that I really wanted to highlight here is that we've pulled through the object from this dashboard. We know the context. This is that Windows Server's object from SCON. If we were looking at a large list of objects, we would see the large list of objects, which is good. You haven't got to start from a blank sheet of paper every time. Hooray! Very good stuff. So if I wanted to add in a second, object, server, whatever, I could. In this case, I'm not going to do so. I'm going to include this object and contained objects to handle the children as well. And I'm going to stick in a comment along the lines of holiday. Holiday is planned. So this is a planned maintenance window. And I'm going to set this for 30 minutes. This is a demo after all. And I'm going to hit save and confirm, which will, of course, put the server into maintenance mode from now. You see exactly what has happened here in that the server has been put into maintenance mode a few seconds ago by me. Unsurprisingly, you can see the comments and the reason as well, which is great. I can also edit and cancel from here as well. If I close out of this, what I should see in a moment when SCOM is caught up is that this server will go into maintenance mode as well. There it goes, along with all the bits and pieces that are on it. So there we go. You're welcome, whoever this box belongs to. You're not going to be swamped with a sea of unwanted alerts when you get back. That's pretty cool. One of the other pieces of maintenance mode that's worth sort of talking about is, in addition to what's baked into the product, there is a dashboard pack that we're making available that adds a couple of things. It adds a dashboard, but it also adds a perspective for maintenance mode, which you can see I have pre-installed because you all know how to install dashboard packs already. So if I go to maintenance mode now over here, you'll see a bunch of really useful information. It's all obviously contextual because it's a perspective. So you can see for this particular machine, the vast majority of maintenance reasons have been planned, which is good. And the duration is summarized here, along with all the other relevant bits of information like the maintenance mode instances and the state of maintenance over time, as shown on the calendar view. That is all really useful stuff. Now, this data, we're just pulling this from SCOM's SQL databases, but this data is not available in this form from the SCOM console. So we're hoping that you find this useful. The other piece of this dashboard pack is under Teams. If you go down to SCOM, we have maintenance mode details over here. So if I click this guy, like this, you will see a bunch of information. The first thing you see is all of the objects currently in maintenance mode. Now, this is a demo lab and the list is large, 209. This will potentially be very large in a large production deployment. Obviously, you can sift and sort and filter and whatnot and search, obviously, from the grid component here. Now, this was actually requested by a customer when sort of seeing early versions of this, as this particular customer puts servers into maintenance mode before they deprecate them, which is quite a common scenario forever, effectively, for a long period of time. So you'll see things like this in maintenance mode for the next 2 years. Now, when those servers have been deprecated, in theory, the maintenance mode schedule and, of course, the agent is no longer needed. So some gardening in SCOM, some cleanup might be required. So this is useful for seeing that. We can also see other more sort of general ways of slicing and dicing maintenance mode, such as who's put things into maintenance mode where it's active right now. I'm winning, just one ahead of Kevin here from the looks of things. And then the remaining time and reason, and planned versus unplanned. Good news in our lab, most of the instances are planned rather than unplanned. But nonetheless, that's the data. So we hope you find these dashboard pack dashboards and perspectives useful. We're going to go back now into my showcase dashboard, the way we entered into this whole conversation. We started here with the alert Scalar tile. Now, in Dashboard Server 6.3, I think it was, we introduced the ability to click into the middle of the donut tile's donut rather than clicking on the subsegments. And that was because I wanted that feature in for scheduled maintenance mode. Because the drill down that we're going to be shown is for SCOM objects. And I may want to set maintenance mode for a bunch of them, regardless of their health state. So if I use this newfound power in 6.3 and drill into the middle of the donut like this, you will see a bunch of objects. And in this case, I've just scoped in my simple lab to all Windows computers, which clearly you would not do in production. You'll do something more clever than this, but you get the idea. So there's no changes to the view here. You can see what's in maintenance mode right now. You can see what's active and online and working and what's powered off and whatnot as well. But the new addition is in the theme of maintenance mode, the maintenance mode button up here in the top right corner. Now, I've clicked this and immediately the context from these objects is fed into what you see here. So I can see that for the objects selected, there are a bunch of active maintenance mode windows. You can see the one I set up in my earlier demo with holiday for this guy's user box. It has 26 minutes left to run. You can see a bunch of other ones as well. And you can also see the schedules. Now, I could, from here, create a new schedule. If I do this, again, that context has flowed through. You'll see that the all Windows computer group, which is ultimately what this tile is scoped to, the donut tile that I drilled down into, is pulled through, so I don't have to recreate that. If it weren't a group, if it were a list of random objects, you'd see those random objects over here. And you can, of course, add bits and pieces as well. Let's add something random just to illustrate this point, whatever. I'm not really going to put a domain controller into maintenance mode right now, but you get the idea. Their objects are simply selectable and you can add them in. You can obviously choose whether to include contained objects as well. And then all the other levers you would expect for maintenance mode are settable here. You've got the start time and date, start date rather, and time below. You have got whether this is going to run for a specified duration or till a specific end time. You can specify expiry, so I can't clearly do that when the frequency is once, because by default it expires after it's run. But let's say I said weekly every, whatever, Thursday, Friday, and Monday every 1 week, then I could set an expiry and it would ask me for a date and time, which I can give it just to illustrate the point and how this thing works. Basically, everything you would expect from the SCOM console is available to you here. And that's because ultimately, as I said earlier, we're using the SCOM SDK to facilitate everything we're displaying here. Now, I could hit save and I could create this schedule, but I don't want to forget that I've created a schedule to set all Windows computers in maintenance mode. So I'm not going to do this. I'm going to, in true demo style, show you the edit functionality for one that I sort of built earlier. I'm going to quickly expand this list and find my Bruce's demo schedule here, which is actually in status of running right now. So in theory, this schedule, you'll find an instance of it at the top for some of the machines that are in it. Now, SCOM doesn't have a hard link between the schedules and the instances. So it's quite hard to see in SCOM which maintenance mode instances are from schedules. But you can see when you hit edit that this schedule is currently running. So there are limited things that you can change because you don't want to necessarily risk impacting the maintenance mode instance that is currently running. So there you go. Otherwise, if this were not running, you would be able to remove objects, for example. So if I go into one of these other schedules, let's pick on, I don't know, this guy over here. Let's say I wanted to add in an additional object or remove an object. I could choose to do so, as I showed you earlier. And if I wanted to, I don't know, modify the monthly increment, I could do so, and I could hit save and it would update. I could obviously disable it from here as well and delete it from here as well, which I'm not going to do. I think that's a test one. You can see here from the main window, I can actually just disable a schedule, which I have just done. You can obviously see all of those schedules, including the disabled ones. So it will be at the bottom down here, test schedule, there it is. So I can obviously re-enable just by hitting enable once more, and it will go back into the list at the top. So very powerful. I mentioned that my demo example, my Bruce's demo schedule, I had two objects in here. If I go back into it quickly, int Prometheus and int test FSO1. I can actually stop that schedule, the instance of the schedule from here, like this, which does that. And you'll see a bunch of active instances clear out from the top. And that's because those two objects are now not in maintenance mode right now. But that doesn't affect the schedule itself. This is all as you would expect from standard SCOM functionality. But now, because there is no maintenance mode window running, I can remove an object from the schedule and change some stuff. Let's maybe set it to 120 minutes and hit save for future. And there we go. My schedule is updated. What else is there to show you? I think that is basically it. It's one of those really nice features that it does what it says on the tin. If you know how it works in SCOM, you won't be surprised at what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. It will just work as expected. But with the benefit of one, being in SquaredUp, two, nice user experience, and three, that context. So you always start with the context of the tile or dashboard you were looking at, where those tiles are aware of the fact they're SCOM objects, as in this case. So that is really cool. All right, I'm going to now go back to slides. If you have any questions on anything to do with scheduled maintenance mode, I can see one already. I'll answer them all at the end, but I'm going to go back into slides for now and take those questions at the end. Cool. So moving on now. So I mentioned there is a delighter in this release, which is a nice little addition to the release. And in the case of this release, that is the new Markdown tile. Now, there are other ways of decorating your dashboards in Dashboard Server. There's the HTML tile, for example, but Markdown is so much simpler and less dangerous than HTML. And it supports fairly standard Markdown, so anything you can kind of think of. Headings and bold italics and bulleted lists and images and whatnot are all supported. But also we have the ability to take a scope, as is the case in this bottom left example, and you can pull through using Moustache the properties from the objects that you've scoped through. Very good for decorating your dashboards. So that's a nice little delighter. I'm going to show you that really quickly. So we're going back to demo land before we go on to the final thing. So back in SquaredUp here, I'm going to go back to my showcase dashboard, and all this colorful stuff down the left and right sides is all done in Markdown. So I'm going to edit again my dashboard, and we'll have a look at my team. This is my engineering team that is responsible for Dashboard Server. I've given them all pseudonyms. They'll be very happy about this, of course. I'm masking their true identity. So this is the team. So we've got Mateus, who is our front-end developer. We've got Kinga, who is our UX designer, etc., etc. You get the idea. It's all well and good knowing the state of the servers, but it's quite useful to be able to decorate those dashboards with other useful pieces of information. Now, if I hit edit on this tile and go into the Markdown, you'll see it's all fairly standard Markdown stuff. So we're defining images. These are saved on the Dashboard server in the www root folder under a subfolder I created called images. And of course, hashes indicate headers. And this syntax is for a URL. So if you look in the non-edited mode, if I hover over this link, you'll get a mail to link. So this will open in my local mail client, which is very, very cool. Let's look at another slightly more complicated example over here. Also, the Markdown tile. Oh, by the way, the Markdown tile is just simply selectable as a tile from the main tile list. Nothing weird there. So this one has a scope. I've given this one the scope of all Windows computers, so it has a scope. And in the Markdown here, this is really just a nice way of illustrating what the feature is kind of capable of rather than anything else. In here, we have an each if loop in here to iterate over all of the servers and display their names. A nice little picture of an arrow and their state and how long they've been in that state for. And if they're in maintenance mode, you get a little spanner picture as well. So let's see, there must be some in maintenance mode. Yes, there are. Here we go. So you get an idea of how this thing kind of works. Obviously, this is not the most useful way to consume this information. We have much nicer native tiles. But the point is, it's quite powerful. The fact I can do each if loops and use Moustache to pull through properties of objects is really quite cool. So have fun with it. I'm interested to hear what you guys kind of use it for and what problems it solves for you when you get your hands on it. All right, back to slides now. Now, for these last slides, we're going to move on to something that's slightly bigger than just a single feature. So this area of focus now is all about the single pane of glass success that we want you guys to have as end users, as our customers. Ultimately, we are a dashboard company made up of two different products now. We have Dashboard Server and we have Cloud. And there are cases where you want to use one over the other, and there are cases when you want to use both together. But when you use both together, you want to be able to integrate between those two tools. And this, what I'm going to show you feature-wise, is part of a bigger theme. So just to set the scene a little bit, Dashboard Server versus Cloud. Dashboard Server is best of breed for where SCOM is the center of your world. I think I've recycled these slides from a previous webinar, so I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. So if SCOM is really, really important to you, and managing tasks and new improved maintenance mode stuff that I've been showing you today, and of course handling alerts is really, really important to you, and of course the deep SCOM class structure knowledge, then Dashboard Server is the tool for you. Cloud, our cloud product, which is what I'm going to go on to, doesn't do SCOM justice like Dashboard Server does. However, Dashboard Server has a large old list of tools and native integrations. And of course, there's Web API and PowerShell and things for where there is no integration. So in other words, you can more or less integrate with anything. But most of what you're going to be looking for is going to be an out-of-the-box data source, which is intended to solve the true single pane of glass use case. We can aggregate data from multiple tools, which is very good. But the big but is, of course, that SCOM use case. So there is a SCOM data source for clouds. You could, in theory, if you have simple SCOM requirements, use cloud and only cloud. However, there is another class of customer that need both because SCOM is important to them and they have a list of tools as large as you like. And in this case, really, you want all of the depth of dashboard server for SCOM, but you also want the breadth of cloud. So SCOM is still important to you, but single pane of glass is also important to you. Well, the first piece of sort of good news is that cloud is free for 3 users. But that is a lovely segue and the background to what I'm going to show you feature-wise in Dashboard Server, which is tear-off tiles. So up until 6.3, including 6.4, obviously, we have the ability to share using open access a whole dashboard, which is great and lets you embed open access dashboards inside of other tools. As we know from support, when sometimes there are permissions issues and whatnot, we know that is being used. That is how people are using open access, as well as, of course, wallboards. So from Dashboard Server 6.4, you have the ability to just embed a single tile. So you have a new button for copy open access URL to just a tile, which lets you, of course, paste that URL into a browser and see just that tile as you would expect. But it also facilitates other use cases like embedding individual tiles in other tools. My screenshot here is from SharePoint, but the real reason that we built this functionality is part of that bigger single pane of glass vision and theme. Ultimately, we want for you to be able to embed dashboard server tiles in SquaredUp Cloud and the other way around. So this is the first piece of our roadmap in this area. So the cloud aspect, embedding dashboard server tiles in cloud, is not yet out there in the wild. So what I'm going to show you is something you can't do yourselves yet, but it's coming very, very soon. And the groundwork is in Dashboard Server 6.4. And that is a perfect point to move on to demo territory once more. So I'm going to go back to Dashboard Server, and we're going to come out of edit mode now and hit our share button. Now, this dashboard has open access enabled. Now, this is a prerequisite for the tiles being shareable independently. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this experience already, but when you enable open access, you have a simple URL for the whole dashboard, which I can then paste into a new tab. And without authentication, see the whole dashboard like so. Very cool, not new functionality, but very cool. Now, if I now hover over one of these tiles, let's say this one, you see, because I've got open access enabled, I have an additional button, copy open access URL, which again, I can paste into a browser tab and see just that tile, which is exactly what you saw in fact, literally the very same tile is what you saw in the slides I just presented. What makes this really useful, though, obviously, is embedding these tiles in other tools. And that is where this tab comes in. So this is my fictitious, fictitious weekly status report for my engineering team, where I've got some beautiful ChatGPT generated status here on the left-hand side. I want to annotate with my environment status. Now, while SharePoint is great for some things, it doesn't know where to start with SCOM, obviously. So the ability to embed a single tile is very, very powerful. If I now edit this SharePoint page, I'll show you how easy this is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new web part, which is their sort of widget, their terminology for widget. And I'm going to find my frequently used embed what do they call them? Web parts. There you go. If I just paste in my URL, I'll get an error message along the lines of, no, this URL is not enabled for embedding. And that's because I need some code effectively that goes around the URL, which I'm going to steal from this tab, this tile over here, this web part over here even. So I'll paste this in and I will get obviously a duplicate of the one above. Let's just check that works. And it did work. If I go back to Dashboard Server 6.3 and get again that URL for this individual tile, and I replace in here the URL in source, which is there. Where does it end? Down to there. Oops. There we go. And I paste over this with the one in my clipboard. And by the way, this iframe code, effectively the syntaxing, is all on our support site, so you can get it from there. And ta-da, here we go. It's working as expected. So I can now republish this with my additional tile. Now, this doesn't have to be, this is for literally any tile from Dashboard Server. It doesn't have to be, could be a Markdown one if you so choose. Could be anything at all. They all have that same, if I hover over one of these tiles, they should all have that same share button as we have seen. There it is. So we could do this with every single one of them. This works in other tools as well. So here I am now in Confluence. Now, personally, as someone with an engineering background, I like Confluence because there's a quite good native integration with Jira that lets me effectively paste in JQL and see the results of a Jira query language filter and individual features. But again, nothing to be said for SCOM, and it's really, really simple in here. Like here's a Markdown one. Markdown tile I pasted in to illustrate that's possible. If I go in here now and go /, they call their things widgets, and they have one called an iframe widget. And it should be as simple as pasting in that URL to the tile, which it should already be in my clipboard. And that's it. You can see it's had a go at resizing it to something nice, unlike SharePoint, which is quite cool, but you can obviously put in here pixel width and height and whatnot, which is very, very cool. But really, the holy grail, the why we built this feature, which is the thing that is coming soon, is to allow us to embed Dashboard Server tiles in SquaredUp Cloud. Now, that's where I come to this tab. So what you're seeing here is not something you're going to be able to do at home yet, but very soon. And the reason why is, if I go and add a new tile, this is something that I have enabled only in my tenant here, which is a new type of data source effectively, in addition to the 3 that are in production right now, which is the embed tile here. And you simply paste the URL in that embed tile in Cloud and hit save. And we're embedding this from Dashboard Server using open access like that. Now, this is obviously cool, and this is significantly better than Confluence or SharePoint because obviously we've got native plugins for a large number of tools. Now, in my real world, obviously I care about what the engineering team are up to. So I do care about bug raise rates and how the Dashboard Server releases are progressing. I do care about, and that data's obviously, by the way, from Jira. I do care about my Azure DevOps pipelines and the state of my builds, how many build failures we're having and that kind of thing. And all of this is real data that's really coming from Azure DevOps. But I do also care about my SCOM data and in the way that is defined in Dashboard Server. Now, from your perspective, you're going to have years and years worth of dashboards in Dashboard Server. So I'm expecting this functionality to be super useful for just creating a single pane of glass. And as I say, we're working on something similar to allow you to embed tiles from Cloud into Dashboard Server as well. So that will be coming soon as well. But hopefully I've done that justice and shown you kind of the capabilities. A number of you I know have used embedding OA dashboards inside of SharePoint. Well, you can now do the same with tiles as well. Right, back to slides. I think that is the demo. So all that's left to say really is that Dashboard Server 6.3 is in release candidates today. So you can simply go to download.squareup.com and go and get it. And it's available, of course, for all of the editions. And as ever, in-place upgrade is our recommended approach. And if you do choose to do so, to take advantage of scheduled maintenance mode, very cool feature, very, very interested to your feedback on it, you will get priority support. And the general availability GA release is on the 28th of August. So anything you find in between RC and GA, please do raise via support and we'll get it fixed for you. All right, before we go to Q&A, just a quick plug for episode 10 of Squapcast, which is our podcast/webinar series. I guess a bit of both, but we're having a chat with one of our customers, Avidi. They're an MSP and they use SquaredUp to manage Azure hosted services as an MSP, but also to keep on top of costs as well as the sort of technical sides of things. So I think they're having a chat with Richard, our CEO, on the 21st of August at 3 p.m. So you've got time still to go to squaredup.com/blog/Squapcast to register. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please do put them in now. And I hope this has been useful and you're as excited about Dashboard Server 6.3 as I am. As I say, scheduled maintenance mode is a very big deal for us and we think it will be for you too. So the first and currently only question is from Scott, who asks, is the maintenance mode overview page available to be viewed under open access? So when you say overview page, if I just quickly go back to my demo lab, if by the overview page you mean this one over here, then ultimately this is a dashboard like any other. This is obviously installed as part of a dashboard pack, but you can enable open access on this dashboard like any other dashboard. So if this is what you meant by the overview page, then yes, that is possible via open access as well, which is very cool. All right, perfect, thanks. Let's see if there are any other questions. I'll just give it a few moments. It seems like there are none. All right. Well, good luck with Dashboard Server 6.3. Really looking forward to hearing your feedback on scheduled maintenance mode and everything else that's in there. It's a really cool release. I'm very excited about it, as you can tell. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I hope this has been useful for you. And until next time, thank you very much. Goodbye.